The Harrison family boardroom hadn't changed in 30 years. The same hulking mahogany table dominated the room, surrounded by leather chairs worn smooth by decades of whispered deals, broken promises, and family feuds. Along the walls, curated family portraits presented a polished illusion of unity and success. Not one included me. I'm Sarah Harrison, though that name had become something of a cautionary tale around here. Among my relatives, I was the disappointment, the one they whispered about at charity galas and laughed about over brunch. Poor Thomas Harrison's youngest, the girl who walked away from the family business. An emergency family meeting had been called to discuss the company's future. But I knew something they didn't. Harrison Industries was already mine. I sat silently at the far end of the table, watching them preen and posture, still blind to the truth. Uncle James stood at the head, his tailored suit doing little to hide his growing paunch. "The numbers don't lie," he said, gesturing toward the projector screen. "Last quarter was our worst in 2 decades. The board's getting nervous." William, my cousin and a VP straight out of college, rolled his eyes. "The board works for us. We're Harrisons. If only you knew. Thanks to a network of shell companies and proxy votes, the board now answered to me. Phoenix Enterprises, my company, had spent the last 3 years quietly acquiring shares of Harrison Industries, bit by bit, until I controlled the majority. The tech division's bleeding money," Elizabeth chimed in, barely glancing up from her phone. "Promoted to Chief Innovation Officer despite no background in tech. We should probably sell it off." I fought back a smile. The tech division was the company's most valuable asset. If only they'd known how to use it. Under Phoenix, I developed software that would soon be worth billions. "What are you smirking at?" Uncle James snapped, turning his glare on me. "Find something amusing about our situation?" The room went still. Even Elizabeth paused her scrolling. "I was just thinking about solutions," I said evenly. "Solutions from you?" He sneered. "The girl who turned down a director position to play startup founder? 5 years ago, I'd walked away from the marketing role they threw at me like a bone. Instead, I invested my inheritance in Phoenix Enterprises, a company built on digital transformation and strategic acquisitions. I have some experience in corporate restructuring," I offered mildly. William scoffed. "Experience? Running your little tech thing out of a WeWork. This is a billion-dollar company, Sarah. Leave the real business to the adults." I thought about my real office, 3 floors of glass and steel in the city's most prestigious tower. The WeWork setup had been a decoy, a way to keep them underestimating me while I built something they couldn't begin to comprehend. My father sat silently. He'd stepped down as CEO last year, handing control to Uncle James despite my warnings. He'd always been too soft, too eager to keep peace with his older brother. "Sarah's company has had some success," he said tentatively. "Maybe we should hear her out." Uncle James let out a derisive snort. "Thomas, your daughter plays business while we manage a real empire. She's worthless, and you know it." There it was again. Worthless. How many times had I heard that word in this room? When I questioned their outdated methods. When I suggested innovation. When I dared to walk away. Elizabeth sighed. "Can we wrap this up? I have lunch at Lusk in 20. I checked my watch. In 4 minutes, everything would change. Phoenix Enterprises' acquisition of Harrison Industries would be announced to the board, followed by a public press release. They would realize, too late, that I hadn't walked away from the family business. I'd taken it. "The tech division isn't your problem," I said, drawing glares. "Your entire business model is obsolete. You're hemorrhaging market share because you refuse to evolve." Uncle James slammed a hand on the table. "How dare you? I've run this company with the same principles your grandfather used to build it, and those principles are exactly why you're failing," I replied calmly. "The market changed. You didn't." "Enough!" he shouted, face red with rage. "You lost the right to criticize this company when you abandoned it. You're worthless to this family." Just then, the door burst open. James's assistant stood there, pale. "Sir, the board. They're calling an emergency meeting. Phoenix Enterprises just acquired controlling interest in Harrison Industries." The room erupted. William dropped his Montblanc pen. Elizabeth's phone hit the table with a loud clatter. Uncle James stood frozen, jaw slack. "Phoenix," my father whispered. "My company," I said, rising slowly. Though I prefer the full name, Phoenix Global Enterprises. We're the country's largest digital transformation firm, specializing in saving companies exactly like this one. The silence was absolute. That moment, years of mockery, of dismissal, of being labeled a failure, all condensed into a single, perfect victory. That's impossible, William stammered. Phoenix is worth billions. You have had a startup. I pulled up our website, casting it onto the projector. My photo, listed as founder and CEO. Our acquisitions, our offices, our market value. The startup was a cover, I explained. It gave me room to build while you laughed behind my back. Every time you called me worthless, I bought more shares. Every time you underestimated me, I grew stronger. Elizabeth had gone pale. The tech division will be restructured, I confirmed, along with everything else. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. At noon, the press release goes live. I'll be announced as the new CEO. You can't do this, Uncle James croaked. We're family. I laughed softly. Was it family when you dismissed me? When you rejected every idea I offered? When you let this company become your playground while it burned to the ground? My father stood slowly. Sarah, please, we can talk. We could have talked years ago, I interrupted. You could have listened. But you made your choice. And now, so had I. The Harrison family boardroom hadn't changed in 30 years. The same polished mahogany table, the same leather chairs worn by decades of power plays, betrayals, and hollow toasts. Family portraits line the walls, curated images of legacy, unity, and success. I wasn't in any of them. I'm Sarah Harrison. Not that anyone in this room ever uses my name anymore. To them, I'm just the disappointment. The one who walked away. The whispered cautionary tale at charity galas and country club brunches. Poor Thomas Harrison's youngest, too idealistic, too stubborn, too different. Today's emergency meeting was supposedly about saving Harrison Industries. But I knew something no one else in this room did. The company didn't belong to them anymore. Uncle James, bloated with self-importance and wearing a suit that barely concealed his growing gut, stood at the head of a table. Last quarter was our worst in 20 years, he barked, stabbing at the projection screen. The board is losing confidence. William, my cousin and a VP thanks only to his last name, smirked. The board works for us. We're Harrisons. No, I thought. The board works for me now. Over the last 3 years, my company, Phoenix Enterprises, had quietly acquired a controlling stake in Harrison Industries, using a web of proxy votes and shell corporations. While they mocked my little startup, I built an empire in the shadows. Elizabeth, my sister, and the so-called Chief Innovation Officer didn't even look up from her phone. The tech division is hemorrhaging cash. We should sell it off. I nearly laughed. The tech division was actually the only valuable part of this crumbling relic because of me. Phoenix had developed the software that could turn it into a goldmine. They just hadn't realized it yet. Uncle James turned toward me. What are you smiling at? The room froze. Just thinking about solutions, I replied evenly. He sneered. From you. The girl who abandoned the company to play startup founder. 5 years ago, I'd refused the hollow position of marketing director, a title meant to keep me occupied while the real decisions happened behind closed doors. I used my inheritance instead to found Phoenix Enterprises, building it from the ground up with digital transformation and acquisitions in mind. William laughed. You run a tech company from a WeWork. This is a billion-dollar corporation. I thought of my real office, the top 3 floors of the city's most prestigious tower. The WeWork was a decoy. Dad, Thomas Harrison, sat silent, shrinking in his chair. He'd handed control of the company to James a year ago, ignoring my warnings. He always chose peace over progress, loyalty over leadership. Sarah's had some success, he mumbled. Maybe we should hear her out. Success. James scoffed. She's worthless, Thomas. You know it. Worthless. The word rang like a bell. The label they'd thrown at me for years. When I challenged them. When I left. When I refused to play along. Elizabeth sighed. Can we wrap this up? I have a lunch at Lusk. I glanced at my watch. 4 minutes. In 4 minutes, the press release would hit. In 4 minutes, the truth would detonate. The tech division isn't your problem, I said, letting the calm roll through my voice. The entire business model is outdated. You're failing because you refuse to evolve." James slammed the table. "How dare you?" I met his rage with ice. "You say you follow grandfather's principles, but he was an innovator. He built Harrison Industries by betting on the future. You've turned it into a museum. You walked away from this company." "No, I walked away from you." And then, right on cue, the door burst open. James's assistant, pale and breathless. "Sir, the board is calling an emergency meeting. Phoenix Enterprises just announced controlling interest in Harrison Industries." Chaos erupted. William dropped his Mont Blanc pen. Elizabeth's phone hit the table. James looked like he might collapse. Dad whispered, "Phoenix is your company." I stood slowly. Phoenix Global Enterprises, the largest digital transformation firm in the country. And as of this morning, your majority shareholder. The room fell into stunned silence. I walked to the head of the table, James's seat, and opened my laptop. "Let's talk restructuring." Starting with the tech division. No one spoke. For once, no one dared. The next hour flew. The board, unable to fight the numbers, confirmed me as CEO. The press release went live at noon. Harrison Industries stock surged 15% in under an hour. Investors applauded. My family crumbled. "This is illegal!" James screamed. "You tricked us." "No," I replied. "I outmaneuvered you. If you'd read a single shareholder report instead of golfing 3 days a week, you might have noticed." Elizabeth frantically texted. William threatened lawsuits. I ended their roles before they could finish their tantrums. "You can't fire us. We're Harrisons." "So am I said. "And for years, you called me worthless. How does it feel, being fired by someone worthless?" My father sat in the corner, face pale. "Where did we go wrong?" "You didn't look. You never looked. I wasn't playing your game. I was building my own." My assistant Catherine entered. "Miss Harrison, the auditors are ready." "Perfect," I said, turning to James. "Let's see what your principled leadership was really costing us. Country club dues, hidden loans, misreported expenses. The SEC will love this." "You're destroying the family," Elizabeth whispered. "No," I said. "You destroyed yourselves. I just revealed the truth." "Escort them out," I told Catherine. "They'll need to clear their offices today." James tried to bluster again. "You'll regret this. The family won't stand for it." "The family," I said flatly, "doesn't have a vote. Phoenix owns 58%. I turned to Dad. "You can stay. As an advisor. If you're willing to listen this time." He looked at me for a long moment. "When did you become so powerful?" "I always was. You just never noticed." 6 months later, everything had changed. The old family portraits were gone, replaced by a new brand, a new culture, and new leadership chosen on merit, not bloodline. The tech division now led our innovations. The company's future had never been brighter. Uncle James was facing trial for embezzlement. Elizabeth was banned from securities trading. William was broke, disgraced, and, last I heard, working on a resume for the first time in his life. "Will you attend the sentencing?" Catherine asked one morning. I looked up from my reports. "No, I have a company to run." She paused. "The new boardroom photos are here. Shall we hang them?" I smiled. "Yes. Take down the old ones. This isn't a family company anymore." I looked out the window, down at the city below. It's something better. That evening, long after most of the office had gone quiet, there was a knock at my door. My father stepped in. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older, wearier, but in his eyes, for the first time, there was something unexpected. Pride. "I underestimated you," he said, his voice low. "We all did. Can you ever forgive us?" I let the silence sit between us for a moment, not to punish him, but because I needed to decide what forgiveness even meant anymore. "This was never about revenge, Dad," I said finally. "It was about proving that success doesn't have to look like what this family demanded. It was about building something better on my terms." He nodded slowly, absorbing that truth with a heaviness that told me he knew how deeply they'd failed me. "You've done exactly that," he said. "The company, it's extraordinary now." "It always had the potential," I replied. "But no one wanted to see it. You were all too busy clinging to old definitions of power and legacy." He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, even if I don't fully understand how you became this version of yourself. I've always been this version, I said softly. You just never looked close enough to see it. After he left, I stood at the window, watching the city shimmer to life beneath the dusk. Somewhere out there, my relatives were bracing for the fallout. Uncle James was preparing for his sentencing, his reputation shattered. Elizabeth had put her penthouse on the market to cover legal fees. William was applying for entry-level jobs, trying to relearn humility in his mother's guest room. But I wasn't thinking about them anymore. I was thinking about what came next. The company, the people we'd brought in, the future we were building now that the past no longer dictated our path. I wasn't preserving some brittle legacy. I was creating something entirely new. The daughter they once called worthless had become the most valuable Harrison of all. And I was just getting started. Catherine's voice came through the intercom. Your 7 p.m. is here. The venture team from Silicon Valley. I straightened my jacket and smiled. Send them in. Then I added, almost as an afterthought, also, have the old family photos boxed up and sent to my relatives. They'll need the memories, more than I do. The images would arrive at their diminished addresses. Elizabeth's cramped rental, William's borrowed bedroom, Uncle James's lawyer's office. Pictures of a family that once thought they were untouchable. But I wouldn't be in those photos anymore. I had new pictures to take, new rooms to command, new traditions to build. Because in the end, I didn't just rewrite the rules. I became the proof that success speaks louder than legacy. And sometimes, the best revenge is leading the future.